Hello and welcome to part 2 of our Muna Party Tunisian crochet cardigan. Last time we met, we went over the basic pattern and talked about gauge, the stitches that were used, the simple stitch, the last simple stitch, and the honeycomb stitch. And we started on our back piece. And as of class this morning, no one had completely finished, including me, which was fine. But what we've done is we've worked the back. So I'm turning it around so you can see. Started down here with the honeycomb stitch, worked our back. I'm going to turn it around because we're going to be using right and left. And we started, I'm going to remind everybody how to do this part, coming over the front for the right front panel. So I'm going to demonstrate that. Realize I shouldn't have the window to my back here. The right front panel. And then I'm going to show you today, I'm going to show you how to pick up for the left front panel. I'm going to show you how to bind off or cast off, or how to do a completely, when you're completely done with a piece, there's a way to do a finishing row. So I'm going to show you that. And I'm going to show you how to start the sleeves and to work increases. So that's the plan. So after going through this in class this morning, we decided that we would like an extra session for this class. So next month, we were already scheduled for next month, October 28th. And we're also going to go into November 25th. So we'll continue on into November so that we have time to talk about blocking. I know a couple people might need to do a few modifications in maybe adding a few extra stitches before we seam it up. So we just didn't want to rush the project. It's such a nice cardigan. We want to make sure everybody's fits. So just so you know, there's not one more session after this, there's 2, and I'll update that on the website. All right, so let's continue on. So I'm gonna switch over to the camera, but just so you know, got yarn everywhere. Here's where we've been working our back. And what I'm going to show you now and remind you is how we then start to just work the right front panel that'll come down this way, okay? And I'm going to be referring to pages in the pattern, so you can make notes around there if that's helpful. Okay. All right. Make that bigger. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to start on, we've been working on, we worked across the back right here. And we worked to a certain length. You decided how long you really wanted it to be. But there's a space here for you to mark how many simple stitch rows you completed. So I want to show, that's the other piece I want to show. I want to show you how to count your rows, a nice easy way to count your rows. You need to know that. And we need to mark our last row so that we can make everything match up at the end, right? So we've been working along here. So I have actually not counted my rows yet. I will, but I haven't done it, but I'm going to show you how to do it. I think it's easier, instead of counting individual little boxes or bars or whatever visually you see. Let's see when you're looking at the Tunisian simple stitch. I think it's a little easier to look at your the beginning of your row, where you start, not the ending the last Tunisian stitch, but where you're beginning on your right. Kind of turn it on the side and you will see these chains up the side. So each chain represents a complete row, which means a simple stitch row plus a return pass. So you can count the number of rows by counting the chains. And then you could hang stitch markers there for every 10 rows, however you want to do it to keep track if you'd like. What I've done though is I have put, and I'm gonna verify this. I think I maybe have moved this over a little bit. I'm gonna count my rows. But when I was ready to start my front panel, she wants you to put a marker at the beginning of your last row that you did all the way across and at the end of the last row, okay? And that's so that when you'll know where to start counting your rows for the front panel, okay? So make sure you put those 2 stitch markers in. And I think I have mine in the right place. I'm gonna double check, but, and then what you're gonna do for your right front panel, depending on your size, is you're gonna work the regular simple stitch across a certain number of stitches based on your size. So for me, it was 27. I had started with a larger size because I needed a little more width around the hem, but not so much up here around the shoulder. So I started a little wider and I did a little decreasing. So now I'm working on a different size than when I had started. So I've got 27 stitches here. And then I just continue to work for my front panel, Tunisian simple stitch. And I will do this for the same number of rows that I did it for the back, for the back panel. Now, when you're counting those rows, you don't want to count the honeycomb stitch, because what that's going to tell you is the number of rows of simple stitch. If we have the same on the front and the back, will be time to start. It'll tell us when to start the honeycomb stitch on the end of the front.
Hey, Pam, I have a question.
Please, yes.
So, like when it says to work so many stitches across for like the front right panel, are we counting the loop that's on our hook as one of the stitches?
It is an excellent point that came up this morning. The loop that is on your hook, let me put mine in here so you can see. When you're going to pick up stitches, and this becomes really important when we do the sleeves and the increasing. When you are starting your Tunisian, you never go underneath this bar right here. This stitch is really already completed by the loop that's on your hook, but you need to count it as one of your stitches. So this is stitch 1, and then when I go in here, now I have 2 stitches, okay? So you do need to count that first stitch that's on your hook as one of the stitches, okay? That was a really good question. And when I show you how to do the increasing, that will be very important because you have to do a certain number of stitches and then increase, and then a certain number of stitches and increase. And if you don't count that first stitch on the hook, you will be off. You won't get your last increase in, okay? And they should be evenly spaced. Okay, so you're gonna work your front panel the same number of stitches. The same number of rows. So now, the same number of rows as you did for the back, and then you'll move on to your honeycomb pattern to finish the front panel. So remember, the honeycomb pattern, which is also on page 3, has the honeycomb pattern for an odd number of stitches and an even number of stitches. So double check how many stitches you have and make sure you're following the correct panel. The correct pattern. I had a different number for my hem. I had either odd or even, and I had something different. It's just a reverse so to make sure that it works out. So just double check that when you start. You're going to do your honeycomb pattern. and then you're going to do one last row of Tunisian simple stitch. So we're going to pretend that I have done that and I've worked all the way across. I've done my last Tunisian simple stitch row, and then we're going to, she says, to slip stitch bind off loosely. So I'm going to demonstrate how to slip stitch bind off loosely. So when you've done your Tunisian simple stitch, let's curl here, you're left with this last row with really open boxes, okay? Doesn't look like the rest of the stitches because it gets filled in when you do the next row. So what do you do when you're done with your rows? You've got to fill that in with something and to give yourself a nice edge. So here's how you do a slip stitch bind off, okay? And loosely is a key. You've worked really hard to get nice even tension this whole way. Don't blow it by doing a really tight bind off, which is a tendency for people at every experience level, because it will pucker, it will pull in if your bind off is too tight. It's not a big deal to pull it out and do it again, but pay attention to that. All right, so here's how you do a bind off, a slip stitch bind off, I should say. So you're going to go in just like you're picking up a vertical bar. And I'm going to yarn over, and instead of just putting a stitch on, I'm going to keep pulling through and pull through both loops. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the next vertical bar. Make sure you don't miss any. And pull it all the way through. It's like a slip stitch in regular crochet. But you really do want to keep it loose. You want it to really match the tension that you've already been working with. Let me do a couple more and I'll show you the nice edge that you get. Whoop. So if at this point, you felt it, you could stop and look. If it looked too tight, just rip it out and redo it. Whoop. Okay, so let me show you what that looks like. So what that slip stitch row does is it fills in these open boxes, just like that. So it looks like the regular Tunisian stitch, and it gives you a nice, like a chain edge. Gives you a nice chain edge. And because you've got your honeycomb stitch here, it's not going to curl up the way that this is because the honeycomb is going to make it lay flat. So it really will match your cast on, your chaining cast on, with a nice finished edge. This is also really nice if you're doing a different Tunisian project and you knew that, I'm sorry, my camera's off here a little. There we go, wobbly. And you needed to pick up and add a border to something. It gives you a really nice chain edge, easy to get your hook into if you needed to add a border to something. If you were doing a Tunisian blanket or something, and it gives you a nice edge that matches your side here. Nice for seaming, all those good things. Okay, so that's the slip stitch bind off. Okay, so you're going to work your right front panel all the way across or all the way down, do your honeycomb, your last Tunisian simple stitch, and your slip stitch bind off. And then it says fasten off. That is code for cut your yarn. You can safely cut your yarn there. All right, so then we're going to move over to page 4, and we're going to do the left front panel. And this, let me move it over here a little bit. The stitches that are in between the right front panel and the left front panel are going to be your back of neck. Okay, we will end up, when we pick up the collar, we will end up picking up these stitches. So they won't remain unworked. They'll get picked up, but and worked into the collar, but we're going to leave them unworked at this point. So for my size, I counted my unworked stitches, which was, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 22. I skipped my 22 unworked stitches. And then she wants me to pick up pull a loop, I'm sorry, in the remaining 28 stitches. I have one more stitch on my left than I do on my right. It's totally fine. I think everybody's size has an additional stitch, so don't worry about that. It's all good. So I want to show you how to pick up, how to start in. So I have marked, I have my last stitch, my last row here, the ending marked. And I put a stitch marker so I wouldn't have to hunt for this again today of where I want to start. Right here, this bar right here will be my first stitch. Okay. So I'm going to start with a slip knot on my hook. And it's a little fussy to start, but all right. So I've got my marker here. This was the first bar, but I've already got a loop on my hook. So I'm not going to go under the first bar. I'm going to go underneath the second bar. And I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop. This is going to look kind of wobbly for a hot second. Don't worry about it. We've got this tail to secure it down when we're done. It'll be fine. And you're going to work all the way across. Doing your simple stitch. Oh, it goes on so quickly when you've already done it and then ripped it out. Right. Put all your stitches on. So pretend I went all the way across, and then you would do your return pass. I'm just going to work back so you can see how that beginning looks when we get back there. Okay, so once you get this done, leave that there for a second. You can take this tail and pull it down in the middle. Pull it through. And you could go ahead and weave it away at this point if you wanted to. But once I pull it down, it looks just like a regular stitch. And you could weave that tail away. And then you're ready to go. Okay, so then you've got your loop on your hook. You don't pick up the first bar, you go into the second right here and you work your way across. And then you're going to work your left front panel all the way down, same way you did your right front panel. Working down to the honeycomb stitch, and then the last Tunisian row, and then you'll do that bind off. So what you'll end up with is you'll end up with a back and two fronts coming across. And you're going to have stitch markers right here where dividing the front and the back, which will be really helpful when we're ready to put the sleeves in, because we'll want to know where the top of the shoulder is. And that's what those little stitch markers are going to help us do. So make sure those stay in there. Okay. Any questions about finishing the body? No? Okay. You can always come in or call me if you've got questions. Now I have like 3 balls of yarn attached to that piece. All right. Just going over my list here. So front pan, okay. Sleeves and increases. So the sleeve starts at the cuff, okay? So you're going to start with the honeycomb pattern. You're going to chain for your size. And I recommend on this pattern, the sleeves start on page 4. And she's got the sleeve directions written for every size. Cross out the size you're not paying attention to, or circle or highlight the section that you are doing for your sleeve, so that you're not distracted by. They're basically all doing the same thing. It just has a different number of stitches and a different number of increases based on the size. All right. So for the size sleeve I wanted to make, I'm doing the 2XL because I have a substantial arm. And I wanted to make sure that if I pulled it on over a shirt or something that I had a little bit of room. So I'm doing the 2XL size. So I chained 33, and then I worked my honeycomb stitch pattern over those stitches. And then I worked 1 row of Tunisian simple stitch. And then I think everybody's pattern, depending, no matter your size, row 9 is the first increase. So that's what I want to show you how to do. It's how to do an increase. Okay, so let's turn this around. So here's my honeycomb that I started. The honeycomb looks so much better from a distance. With this a little bit of texture in this fabric, you really can't see it when it's up close, but it does look nice far away. Okay, increases. So my increase row, get my stitches back into my yarn. My increase row says to TSS, Tunisian simple stitch, 6, and then increase. And that is in parentheses. So everything that is in parentheses is what you have to repeat. And I have to repeat that 5 times. And that'll get me across my row. So here's where it becomes important that you do count that first, let's finish this row, stitch as the first loop on your hook as a stitch. Okay. So I'm supposed to Tunisian simple stitch 6. So I'm going to count this one as the number 1, the first one. Okay. And here's my second bar. This would be a good time to check your stitch count. Let's see. To make sure that it's all going to work out, just give yourself a quick check. So I want 6 on my hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now it's time to do an increase stitch. There are a few ways to do an increase. The recommended way on this pattern is to do what's called a bar increase. There is a link in your pattern to a video, which is excellent. It's not Toni's video, but she links to another designer's video, which is excellent. So if you forget and you're somewhere, you can take a look. If this doesn't click for you, you can look at that video. So I'm going to zoom in so you can really see the bars. All right. So and she describes this in the description too, how to do it. All right. So when you've got, here's my next bar, my next vertical bar right here. The vertical bar is a loop of yarn that goes over, and then my return pass kind of cuts through it and then comes down the back. So here's the back side of that loop. If I were to pull, it would pull on the front loop. It's like a little horseshoe nestled in there. And we've been working into the front loop, the front bar. To do an increase, a bar increase, we're going to work into the back bar, which is right there. Okay. So, let me make sure you can really see it. So here's my next front bar. I'm going to locate my back bar, and it will start to become pretty clear where it is once you recognize what you're looking for. I distorted it a little. All right, so here's my back bar. So I'm going to go, just like I've been doing, instead of the front bar, I'm going to go underneath the back bar, yarn over, and pull up a loop. So now I've got 7. I've added 1 extra stitch. The front bar from that stitch is still right there. And that needs to be the next place I make a stitch. And that's my next counting. So I've done 6 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and an increase. And now it starts, I repeat. So I'm going to go into that front bar of the same stitch. And that's 1. Did I catch it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nope, I didn't catch it. Back bar increase. That's my increase. And here's my front bar. So that's 1. So I've taken I've made 2 stitches out of that 1 bar. So I picked up the back and the front. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm ready to increase. So here's the front bar. I'm sorry, I keep moving my camera. Here's the front bar. The back bar is right here. It's the other side of this loop. And it should be a little tight to get in there. But pull it up with the same tension you've been using. So that's my increase, and now I continue on. I start over with 6. So I'm doing this 5 times all the way across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here's my next one. There's the front. I'm going to come up under the back. And then under the front, start my repeat over. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do it one more time. 4, 5, 6. And then put the back bar. That's my increase. Now I want to go underneath the front bar. This, if your stitches are really tight, it will be a little bit hard to do this. Okay. And then you'll continue on. For my pattern, I'm going to go do this all the way across, and I should have 1 stitch left. If I've counted my stitches correctly, I have 1 stitch left to make a Tunisian simple stitch, and then I do my last stitch, and then I do the return pass as usual. All right, so let me return pass back here. And then what you should do, and you can't really do this until you've done the return pass, because your row, you haven't done a whole row until you've done the return pass, is to mark the end of this row. Because you're going to repeat this increase row. I believe for my pattern, I have to work like 6 or 7 rows until I do another increase row. And in between there, I'm just doing regular simple stitch. And once I get all the way to the end, it's so humid in here, my hook is sticking in. You know I'm not happy about this humidity. Everybody knows it comes in the shop they wear a coat. Then, now that I've completed that row, I can put stitch marker on the end, on that end chain. And that will tell me, now I can count the rows between my increases, okay? So now I know that's where I did an increase row. For my particular pattern, I do rows 10 through 16 in just simple stitch, and then I do another increase row. This time I'll do 7 in an increase, and then you'll do 8 in an increase, and go on. So what I found as I was doing this, I worked on it, and I was like, ooh, I wonder how long I want to make the sleeve. And I started to kind of pull it around what I like to call my substantial arms. And I realized that it was a little snug right here, okay? Now, blocking, I know that I worked with this yarn before. I know when it blocks, it will bloom. So I started to kind of account for that. But I realized by the time I got up here, it was going to be a little too snug. So what I've decided to do is I'm actually going to start my second sleeve as a tester before I rip all of this out. And I'm going to start my increases a little sooner. And I'm not going to put as many rows in between my increases because I need to get to the wider part sooner than that it has been planned in this pattern. That's what's going to work for me. Whatever works for you is fine, but know that you can do that. So what I'm going to do is I'll work on that. So I'm going to start my second sleeve. I do like the way it fits. I've got enough room here, and I like to wear kind of like a bracelet sleeve. I don't like it way down. So I figured this is where I'd like it to roughly end. And then that feels fine. So I don't feel like I need to cast on or chain a different number of stitches, but I need to do my increases a little sooner. So instead of working, I'll do my first row of increases, and instead of working 10 through 16 in simple stitch, I might just do 3 rows of simple stitch and do another increase. And I'm going to test it as I go, which is nice. I can keep just putting it up my arm and see how that works out. Okay. So know that you can do that. You could have fewer increases. You don't have to have all of the increases. We can make it work when we seam it together and we add it in. You don't want to leave yourself super short because you do want to have it a nice depth for the underarm. So you need to have some increases. Otherwise, when we seam it onto the sweater, it won't be deep enough to get underneath your underarm. Okay. Are there questions about the sleeve? I hope I made that clear. Is that good? Okay. So know that you can play around with this just a little bit. And then when we're done, and I'm going to make some notes for next time, which I'm glad we're added an extra class because then we can work on this a little bit next time too, making sure that everybody's sleeves fit because you want it to be comfortable. We're spending a lot of time and a lot of yarn on this sweater. I want it to really fit you well. And these are modifications you can make that will work that are not going to disrupt the pattern. Okay. I think that's all I have. So when you get to the end of your sleeve, if you're confident with the way it goes, you can go ahead and do your slip stitch bind off. Or if you want to wait till you come in, you could leave some extra yarn on there because maybe you want to add a row, take off a row, something like that. You can leave it and do your bind off at the end, and then it'll be ready for blocking and then seaming. Okay. So that's all we've got for this month. Are there any questions?
Nope.
Did you hear?
No.
Okay, good. Did you hear everything this morning, Rocky?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I heard it, and my notes were pretty good too.
Okay, good. Excellent. Okay, so we have a lot of Tunisian crocheting to do between now and next. But know that the nice thing about crochet is if you don't get a piece finished, don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. Start on, if you can try to finish a sleeve. If you don't finish both fronts, fine. But work on a sleeve so that I can help you with the fitting because you can take your hook out, another ball of yarn, and just keep going. So, and then next time what we'll do is we'll work on how to pick up for the collar and how to make a pocket. And we'll start to talk about the fitting and blocking. And then the last session, we'll do some seaming and all of that stuff.
Okay.
That's our plan.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, you guys have a great rest of your week. And I will see you guys next month.
Okay.
All right.
See
Take
ya.
care. Bye.